Before we start the video, timestamps and captions are included. Feel free to skip to any parts that you find to be more valuable for you. Anyways, welcome to my Child Hydro DPS guide. I'm sure there are tons of child guides out there already, but I feel like most of them are rushed due to people wanting to get content out quicker. After spending some time with Child, I thought I would make a guide that is focused primarily on his best assets without requiring any crazy team comp setups. Trust me, the 100k plus damage one-shot videos are super cool and all, but you're not going to be doing that every time, especially in the Spiral Abyss. This guide will be completely focused on properly utilizing his elemental skill, along with elemental burst usage. Without further ado, let us get started. Child has a combination of 6 basic attacks, and like most archers, he has a charged shot that turns into hydro damage. The difference between him and other archers is that his charged shot applies another additional effect called Riptide. Riptide is a status effect that does AoE hydro damage based on the different types of attacks performed by Child. After the status is applied, hitting an enemy with another charged shot will deal Riptide Flash, which will damage enemies over time with Riptide. If the enemy is killed with the Riptide status effect, then Riptide Burst is applied. It is a large Hydro AoE that damages nearby enemies along with giving them the new Riptide status effect. Child's elemental skill, Foul Legacy Raging Tide, is one of the most unique skills in the game. This skill allows him to become a melee character that deals hydro damage. Similar to his bow counterpart, this skill allows him to perform a combination of 6 attacks and a charged attack. Later on in the tips/tricks section of the video, I will discuss which combination of attacks is the best to use to maximize DPS. Any enemies affected by Riptide that is attacked by this skill will now take the additional effect of Riptide Slash, which is a large Hydro AoE that occurs every 1.5 seconds. Unfortunately, this elemental skill is not permanent as it has a 30-second duration. The longer you stay in this melee stance form, the longer the cooldown. If you decide to exhaust the entire duration of the skill, you will be penalized to a maximum cooldown of 45 seconds. Child's Elemental Burst, Havoc Obliteration, is also unique as well since he has 2 different kinds based on his stance. If Child is in his regular form, using a bow, he will do a ranged burst that will deal massive Hydro AoE damage to enemies and apply the Riptide status effect. In his melee stance form, he will deal even greater Hydro AoE damage and trigger a new effect called Riptide Blast, which is additional Hydro damage to enemies. This additional effect will only occur if the enemy is affected by Riptide. Alright, we finally got to the passives of the talent section. So we have his first passive, Never Ending, which extends Riptide duration by 8 seconds. It's pretty good, the longer the status effect, the more potential DPS you can possibly deal. So for the second passive, we have Sword of Turrets. Essentially, whenever he's in his melee stance and you do crit damage, you automatically apply Riptide to any enemy hit. Really great. Just basically more DPS. Lastly, we have his little passive talent here, the final one, Master of Weaponry. So it increases all your party members' normal attack by 1. This is probably one of the most broken passives in the game because it's just a huge DPS boost for the party. I mean, Child's already broken, and with this passive, he makes your other characters broken, so that's like double the brokenness. Alright, so in this section, we'll be talking about the money in your bank account. I would know since I have 15 cents and a Skittle to my name. Yeah, so his first constellation, Foul Legacy Tide Withholder, lowers the cooldown of his elemental skill by 20%. This is huge, especially if the cooldown is 45 seconds. With this constellation, it will be reduced to 36 seconds. His second constellation, Foul Legacy Understream, allows him to regenerate 4 elemental energy for every Riptide affected enemy defeated. It's great because it just means more elemental burst uptime. For his third constellation, Abyssal Mayhem, Vortex of Turmoil, that's the word. Basically increases his elemental skill talent by 3. His fourth constellation, Abyssal, Mayhem, Hydro Sprout, Spout. Dude, I just cannot read today. Hydro Spout. So essentially, whenever he's in his melee stance form, you're just basically getting a lot more damage if you unlock this constellation. Fifth constellation, Havoc, Formless Blade. So basically increases his elemental burst by an additional 3 talent levels. And finally, the most broken constellation of all, Havoc, Annihilation. So essentially, if your elemental skill is ever on cooldown, if you're in your range stance and you use your elemental burst, that elemental skill cooldown is now completely reset. So what this means is you can pretty much have 100% uptime on your elemental skill. But I'm poor and will never get this constellation, so I will never know. And that pretty much sums up all of his constellations. Yeah. I am going to make this short and simple. There are a lot of weapons that Child can use, but a lot of them are locked by gacha. The best two bows that Child should be using is Skyward Harp and Rust. Skyward Harp is arguably the best weapon that Child should be using because of its high base attack. It has a sub stat of crit rate percentage, and it gives you extra crit damage, and it even gets better as you refine it. Unfortunately, I do not have Skyward Harp, so I am using Rust, a good replacement for Skyward Harp. Despite not having the substat of crit rate percentage, attack percentage works just as well. But the main reason why I'm using this as a substitute is because of its passive. Increases normal attack damage by 60%, and I'm pretty sure it's 80% at max refinement. This also applies to the melee stance, so you're basically getting more damage out of your elemental skill. A max refined Rust is easily comparable to a refinement 1 Skyward Harp. Now for the third best in slot bow, we have the Battle Pass bow, which is the Viridescent Hunt. Again, substat crit rate percentage, really great. But the best thing about it is the passive on it, the little mini Venti ult, also applies to your melee stance. So essentially you're sucking in enemies and applying a lot of Riptide damage. It's really great for killing mobs of enemies, such as the Spiral Abyss. Now for the fourth best in slot, I wouldn't say fourth best in slot, but potentially fourth best in slot is Stringless. The only time you should be using this bow is if you're trying to make like a one-shot Child build with your elemental burst, because otherwise I don't see any other reason using it, because the only thing that counts as elemental skill damage is the Riptide effects, but that's not really as consistent as you using your normal attacks when using your elemental skill. So yeah, you want to go for the one-shot Child build, Stringless is the best bet. Lastly, if you're unlucky like Bennett and have bad luck with gacha, I suggest you use the Raven Bow because it gives you an extra 24% attack versus enemies affected by Hydro or Pyro. That's pretty much it in terms of all the bows you can use. Now for some common misconceptions that people have about these two bows I'm about to talk about, the Sacrificial Bow and Slingshot. So for the Sacrificial Bow, it doesn't work on Child because his elemental skill is a duration skill. It's not an instant use. So this passive right here does not apply at all. Short and simple. Secondly, Slingshot. Yeah, this passive does not work on his melee stance either because if you read it carefully, if a normal attack or aimed shot hits a target within 0.3 seconds of being fired, look, this right here, these two keywords, being fired, it's referring to the bow normal attacks. So therefore, when you're in your melee stance, you're not really using a bow, you're using like knives, right? And it says fired. You don't fire knives, you're not shooting arrows. So therefore, Slingshot does not work on Child. Case closed. And that's pretty much it in terms of weapons. Grab some popcorn and heat up your dinner. Let's talk about the most speculated and argued topic for Child. Which artifact set should I use? There are two types of Child users, the Elemental Skill and the Elemental Burst. If you are completely focused on building the best one-shot Child build, then look for the Noblesse Oblige artifact set. I will not be going any further with this since this guide is mainly based on his Elemental Skill usage. Since there is currently no Hydro set in the game, you want to look for set bonuses that increase your overall damage. Most of Child's damage will come from his elemental skill, so let us look at some artifact sets that can possibly improve that damage. The 4 artifact sets that we'll be looking at are the Berserker, Braveheart, Gladiator, and Martial Artist. Where's the Wanderer's Troop artifact set, you ask? We don't use it because, in my honest opinion, 80 extra elemental mastery is a waste of a set bonus slot, and the 35% charge attack bonus is mediocre compared to what the other artifact set bonuses give. Let's go in order based on how I listed the artifacts. You're probably wondering, the Berserker set? It gives no attack increase. That's true, but the 12% extra crit rate you get from the set bonus is huge, especially since crit is needed for a child to flourish as a main DPS. The second set bonus from Berserker is not important at all, it's just the first one. If you're lacking crit rate, then it's a good idea to mix and match the Berserker set with another set. For the Braveheart set, you get a total of 48% damage increase if you equip the full set. For the Gladiator set, you get an 18% damage increase on the first set bonus. The second set bonus does not apply to Child. For the Martial Artist set, you get a total of 40% damage increase if you equip the full set. Which set combination should you use? In all honesty, use what set you believe will benefit you the most. Just know if you decide to go the full set on the Braveheart and Martial Artist artifacts, you are limiting yourself to 4-star artifacts. 5-star artifacts will always be better since you have more chances to upgrade your substats. For my current setup, I am using a combination of 2 different sets. If you want my advice on what sets to use, I recommend that you grab the Gladiator set for the first set bonus. You get an additional 18% attack and it is a 5-star artifact, so more upgrades. The most important artifact pieces are the Feather, Helmet, and Goblet. Try to get 5 stars for those artifact pieces. For the last 2 pieces, the Hourglass and Flower, I'd pick up either the Berserker set for extra crit rate or Martial Artist for the extra 15% damage for your normal/charged attacks. That's enough about artifact sets. Let's talk about what stats you should be looking out for. Child stats should be prioritized in this order: Hydro damage, crit rate, crit damage, attack percent, attack, and energy recharge. Your Goblet piece should always have the Hydro damage as the main stat. The Helmet piece can either have crit rate or crit damage depending on the type of bow you are using. Just know that crit rate is always important over crit damage for damage consistency. If you already have a high crit rate, then prioritize crit damage next. Attack percentage and attack are good substats to obtain as well since they boost your damage. Energy recharge is optional if you want more elemental burst usage, but like I said earlier, your main DPS output will come from your elemental skill. The elemental burst is just the cherry on top for damage. I don't have that many tips and tricks for Child except for 2 important ones. The first one is to always use your elemental burst when it's available and use it when you're in your melee stance for maximum DPS. If you look at the damage scaling for each burst, the melee one does way more damage. Secondly, if you're in a melee stance, the most optimal attack combinations to use is auto, charged attack. The first 3 attacks in Child's melee stance is the quickest and starts to drop off afterwards. After the first 3 attacks, follow it up with a charged attack. Just keep in mind that this tactic uses a lot of stamina, so keep an eye on the stamina bar. Well, that's pretty much it in terms of the Child guide. I hope the guide was short, simple, and easy to follow. Honestly, I wanted to release this guide a bit sooner, but I didn't want to rush it and give out false information. I wanted to confirm that the information that I give was correct and the best. If you enjoy the content, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Please subscribe, I only have 15 cents and a Skittle in my bank account. Okay, bye.